The rain was falling in thin silver sheets, the kind of rain that seems to wash away even the faintest of footprints. On the edge of a small, forgotten town, where the wooden fences leaned tiredly and the roads curved into silence, a sound pierced through the storm, the whimper of a puppy. Not many people walked this path, not many even remembered this broken street, but tonight, fate had other plans. The puppy, no bigger than a loaf of bread, was huddled beneath an abandoned cart. His fur was matted, soaked, and clung to his fragile body. His eyes, wide, trembling pools of brown, darted toward every sound of thunder, as if the sky itself was chasing him. And then, footsteps. Through the rain appeared a girl, around 10 years old, holding a crooked umbrella that was barely clinging to life. Her name was Lila, and she wasn't supposed to be out this late. But Lila had always been the kind of child who wandered further than she should, curious about the world others ignored. She stopped. She heard it. The whimper. Her heart skipped. Slowly, she crouched near the cart, brushing away soggy hay with her tiny fingers until her eyes fell upon him, the puppy. At first, the puppy froze, ears back, tail tucked, as if expecting another cruel hand to push him away. But Lila didn't move quickly. She whispered, her voice soft, "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." For a long moment, the world seemed to pause. Only the thunder rumbled, distant and heavy. And then, almost like the tiniest leap of faith, the puppy crawled forward, trembling, until his nose brushed against her muddy shoe. Lila smiled. That smile, the kind only children give when they discover something precious, lit up the dark street. And in that second, everything changed. The secret she couldn't tell. By the time Lila returned home, her umbrella had flipped inside out, her clothes clung to her skin, and in her arms, wrapped in her jacket, was the puppy. She knew her parents wouldn't approve. They already struggled to take care of themselves, let alone another mouth to feed. Her father worked long shifts at the mill. Her mother juggled part-time jobs. The house always smelled faintly of tiredness and unspoken worry. But when she slipped quietly into her tiny room and placed the puppy on an old blanket, something inside her whispered that this wasn't just a stray dog. He was hers. She whispered a name without even thinking. Shadow. The puppy's ears perked, his little head tilting as if the name belonged to him all along. That night, while the storm roared outside, Lila and Shadow curled together, two souls who shouldn't have found each other, yet somehow did. The next morning, sunlight crept across the wooden floorboards. Lila woke to soft licks on her hand. She giggled, forgetting the weight of reality for a moment. But reality has a way of catching up. Her mother's voice came sharp from the kitchen. "Lila, breakfast." Her heart raced. She knew she couldn't hide Shadow forever. She scooped him into her old backpack, whispering for him to stay quiet. But puppies don't know how to keep secrets. As she zipped the bag, a faint whine escaped. Her mother turned, eyes narrowing. What was that? Lila froze, her face flushing. Nothing, just my stomach." But her mother wasn't convinced. She reached for the bag. At that very moment, Shadow let out a loud bark, muffled but unmistakable. Her mother's eyes widened. "Lila, what did you bring into this house?" The air grew thick. Lila's hands tightened on the bag. She could feel her mother's disappointment before the words even left her lips. "Sweetheart, we can't keep a dog." And just like that, the fragile world Lila had built in one night began to crack. Shadow's secret past. Before Lila could protest, a knock echoed from the front door. A heavy, impatient knock. Her father answered. Standing outside was a man in muddy boots, holding a leash in one hand. His eyes were sharp, his expression sour. "You seen a stray pup?" the man asked gruffly. "Ran off last night. Belongs to me." Lila's chest tightened. She clutched the backpack closer. Her father shook his head. "Haven't seen anything." But the puppy inside the bag whimpered again, and the man's gaze snapped toward Lila. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. The man's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Funny thing about strays, sometimes they get picked up by people who don't know how much trouble they're getting into. He stepped closer. Lila's heart pounded. Shadow trembled inside the bag. And in that terrifying moment, Lila realized Shadow wasn't just a lost puppy. He was running from something. The door closed with a heavy thud after the man left, his muddy boots leaving faint prints on the porch. Lila stood frozen in the hallway, the backpack pressed against her chest. Shadow whimpered quietly, as if sensing the storm wasn't over yet. Her father sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "People like that don't come around unless they're looking for trouble." He shot her a sharp glance. "Lila, if you know something, I don't." She blurted too quickly. Her voice cracked, the kind of crack that gives away more than it hides. Her father's eyes narrowed, but before he could press further, her mother stepped in. "Let her be, James. She's just a child." The word stung because deep inside, Lila knew she was no longer just a child. Not after meeting Shadow. She couldn't simply give him back, not to that man. Something in her bones told her that Shadow wasn't safe in his hands. That night, while her parents argued in muffled voices downstairs, Lila sat on the floor of her room, Shadow's small body curled in her lap. She stroked his fur, whispering, "I don't care what they say, you belong with me." Shadow's tail thumped once, then twice, before he nestled closer, his heartbeat syncing with hers. Whispers in the dark, but comfort didn't last long. Around midnight, a faint sound woke Lila, the crunch of footsteps outside her window, not the gentle rhythm of her father checking the yard. These steps were slow, deliberate, and circling. Her breath caught. She crawled to the window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. In the moonlight stood the man from earlier, only this time he wasn't knocking. He was scanning the yard, flashlight in hand, eyes sharp and searching. Shadow growled softly, the tiniest rumble in his throat. Lila pressed a finger to his nose, trembling. "Shh, please." The man's beam of light swept dangerously close to her window, pausing for a heartbeat. Lila's chest tightened. She ducked low, clutching Shadow against her chest, and then silence. When she dared to peek again, he was gone. But deep down, Lila knew this wasn't the last time he'd come. The next morning, exhaustion weighed heavy on her eyes. At school, she couldn't focus. Her friends laughed, passed notes, whispered secrets, but Lila sat distant, doodling tiny paw prints in her notebook. At lunch, she overheard something that made her stomach twist. Two older boys were bragging about the dog man. "Yeah, he breeds them," one said, shoving chips in his mouth. "Keeps them locked up in cages till they're mean enough to sell." The other snorted. "Bet he makes a ton of money. Who cares if the dogs get hurt?" Lila's pencil snapped in her hand. Now she understood. Shadow wasn't just a stray. He was an escapee, running from a cage, from a life that would have crushed his spirit. That night, she made her choice. She couldn't let him be taken back. The escape plan. She packed a small bag, a flashlight, a piece of bread, her favorite scarf. Shadow wagged his tail as if sensing the adventure, but Lila's heart was heavy. When the house went quiet, she slipped out the back door, Shadow trotting close to her heels. The world outside felt different, darker, sharper, every sound louder than it should be. Crickets chirped like alarms, the wind whispered warnings. But she kept walking, hand on Shadow's back. They reached the old railroad tracks, the ones that curved into the forest. It was the only place she could think of where no one would look. They would hide, just until she figured out what to do. The second twist. For a while it worked. They found an abandoned shack near the tracks, broken roof, but enough shelter to keep Shadow warm. Lila wrapped him in her scarf and smiled. "We'll be okay," she whispered, "as long as we're together." But fate is cruel, because when she woke the next morning, she wasn't alone. The door creaked open, and there he was, the man, standing in the doorway, the light behind him casting his shadow long and dark across the floor. His eyes locked on Shadow, his smile chilling. "Well," he drawled, "looks like I've found my lost dog." Shadow barked, stepping in front of Lila as if to protect her, small body trembling but brave. The man laughed. "You think you can keep him safe, little girl? He belongs to me." "No," she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "He belongs to me." The man took a step closer, and the air between them felt like it might shatter. And in that moment, Lila realized she wasn't just protecting Shadow. Shadow was protecting her. The man's boots scraped against the wooden floor as he stepped into the shack. Every movement was deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. Shadow growled again, louder this time, teeth bared despite his tiny frame. Lila's heart pounded so hard it felt like the walls themselves could hear it. She wanted to run, but where? The door was blocked, the windows too small. It was just her, Shadow, and him. "Hand him over," the man said, his voice low, dangerous. "He's mine, and if you don't, I'll make sure your family pays for stealing from me." Lila froze. Her family. He was threatening them now. Her fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. For the first time, she saw him clearly, the cruelty in his eyes, the greed in his smile. Shadow whimpered but didn't back down, his small body planted firmly in front of her legs. Lila bent low, whispering into his ear, "It's okay, boy, we're not giving up." When she stood tall again, something had shifted in her. She was still trembling, but the fear wasn't stronger than the fire rising inside her. "You don't own him," Lila said, her voice louder now. "He's not your property, he's not a cage to be locked, he's free, and you'll never have him back." The man snarled, lunging forward, but before he could grab Shadow, Lila did the only thing she could think of. She swung her flashlight hard, the beam cracking against his wrist. He shouted in pain, dropping the leash he had hidden in his hand. Shadow lunged, barking furiously, teeth snapping just inches from the man's ankle. The commotion echoed through the forest, and then, in the distance, another sound joined in. Shouts, flashlights, her father's voice. "Lila, rescue." The man's face twisted. He backed toward the door, glaring at her one last time. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then he bolted into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Within moments, her parents burst into the shack, panic written all over their faces. Her father dropped to his knees, grabbing her shoulders. "What were you thinking, running off like that?" But then he saw Shadow. The little puppy, chest heaving, still standing guard. And he paused. Her mother knelt, eyes wide, her voice soft. He protected you?" Lila's throat tightened as tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded, hugging Shadow close. "He's not just a dog, he's family." The sheriff's car lights cut through the trees minutes later. The man was caught, handcuffed, his protest drowned out by the sirens. Neighbors gathered, whispering about what he'd been doing all this time. The cages, the cruelty, the lives he had ruined. But in that chaos, Lila felt only one thing: Shadow's fur against her cheek, his tail thumping weakly as if saying, "We made it." Her father exhaled, heavy but relieved. He looked at the tiny pup, then at his daughter. "All right," he muttered, "he stays." Lila gasped. "Really?" He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "If he's brave enough to protect you, then he deserves to be protected too." Final moment. That night, back in her warm bed, Lila curled up with Shadow. For the first time in days, she felt safe. As sleep took her, she whispered one final promise into his ear. "No more running, no more cages. You're home now." Shadow sighed contentedly, his tiny body pressed close, and for the first time, his eyes closed without fear. And just like that, the forgotten puppy was forgotten no more.